There we go. Great. Right. Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, February 10th, 2023. And this is a meeting of the Financial Facilities and Operations Committee of the Weston Board of Education. The first item on our agenda is an update on facilities and ground maintenance. Mike?
Hey, good morning, everybody. All right, so not a whole lot to report on. One big thing that we are excited about is we're getting the interviews early next week for the new grounds position, which is something that we're really looking forward to, getting these fields back in our hands where we can actually hold ourselves accountable instead of holding somebody else accountable. The surprise of the weather with no winter, the winter of no winter, I guess we'll call it. We're able to get some spring cleaning done much earlier, as well as on fields. So everything's starting to come around. Everything's starting to look good. Hopefully we'll get a nice warm early spring. We have our kickoff call for our parking lot analysis being done on Monday. So that's definitely something they're looking forward to do. That way we can have a little backing for the parking lots that we need, because obviously you guys drive through campus, you see what some of these lots look like and some of these roads look like. So excited about that. And just starting to get the calls rolling and get working on some of these summer projects so we can get them off on time. Other than that, guys, I don't really have much to update.
Can I ask you a question about the tennis courts?
Sure.
I ask this because the town is going to move forward with building their pickleball courts. And, we had talked about, there'd been a discussion about possibly citing those and by central administration and possibly moving tennis courts. What's the condition of the tennis courts at this point?
Well, we had the capital project last year, have the cracks resealed. They were all painted and lined, but it's still, the actual structure of the courts are still damaged. So how long will they last? I mean, with this winter, I don't think we'll have much cracking at all because we haven't had much of a frost heave.
Yeah.
But the damage is still done. So all the concrete is still, still has the actual cracks in it. It's just, they've been filled and it looks great. But I think if we have a chance to move them, I think it's definitely a move in the right direction to have them moved, because the problem with the courts over there is not going to change. It's just going to be, what year is it going to start cracking again?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll follow up with the town and see what they're thinking. They just made an announcement they are going to go forward. They are going to go forward with it. So if we're going to do something creative, let's start thinking about that now.
Right, incorporate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Where are the courts going in? I'm sorry, Steve.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
Which, the pickleball courts?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay, because I've heard a bunch of different things. We would know if it's coming over here near us, right?
Yes, I would think so.
Okay, thank you.
But, sometimes you're asked to know. So, I don't know. I'll find out. Are there any questions of Mike? Okay. The second item is the discussion on sustainability. Who's leading that?
Peter?
Want me to say a few words, Phil?
Oh, you can.
Okay,
and then
Phil?
I guess Peter can jump in.
So we met as with the Live Green Connecticut group that is working with the town, which was great. We had a conversation with them and we publicized their survey. That sort of sparked our meeting. And so we had, I think, a great meeting. One of the things that I said, please include in one of the action projects or whatever for the school is the composting. And that our plan was to start, our tentative plan was to start piloting the composting at the high school the beginning of April, right, Phil? And Phil was going to, reach out to the, whatever that company is called, and kind of work out the details. We had gone to that, an amazing presentation by Mike Aikenhead sustainability class. Phil was there, I was there, Tina was there, Megan was there. It was really well presented, received. We told them that this was the tentative start date to start piloting at a high school, which they're very excited about. So that's one thing that we're committing to. And then we also asked that once they get the results on the survey from the town to, reach out and schedule another meeting with us so we can see what, kind of what the results of the survey are and how maybe some of those projects could dovetail to our projects. And then they're really very gung-ho on electric buses and reminded us that the rule is in 13 years that we have to have electric buses. And so Phil is going to be working with them because, as he said, and I didn't even think of this, the space allotted now for buses, we can't house them there. So more to follow. Feel free to jump in, anyone else.
No, I think the only thing to add is on that last topic on electric buses. One, it just, we need to have a conversation with the town, Peter, because this is going to be part, it is coming, it's mandated, it's a decade out, but it's still mandated and things take a long time. And if they're going to move if the intent is ultimately to move the bus depot, it's not as easy as just moving it because you got to move it to somewhere. And it's not like there's a ton of open space and where you can park buses. And two, I can't imagine what the remediation of that site might look like, given what it's been for its life. So I will also mention this. And oh, by the way, and to the credit of the Live Green Group, I didn't look at the distribution list, but they sent a ton of information on electric buses, post that call that we had with them earlier this week. So they'll be very helpful. But I think we need to bring this. I think we need to bring this to the attention of the town that in a decade we're going to have electric buses and we're going to have to put them somewhere and we have to plan for it. And we need to start thinking about it now. You have any other thoughts?
Let me, I do. I didn't want to introduce this new business, but since we're on the topic of sustainability, first and foremost, I think Melissa did a good job of raising it to its level of, attention to us all. So it's in the budget, which is good because it will continue to be a focus area and maybe a standalone focus area moving forward. Then we break that down and clearly, and we'll have an EOC update later, but you're right, electric buses, electric trolleys, whatever we decide to electrify, one, they need to be put somewhere, and two, they need to be charged. So we have to have that as a consideration for the long term. And I think we've at least started thinking along those paths. And three, to build on sustainability, and I might as well forward this now. Phil and I, and then later I reported that discussion to Melissa. We have a budget line item for light bulbs and capital equipment, but we may want to extend that, and this has been discussed amongst us on like a lighting initiative generally, right? And it's energy efficiency implications, educational implications. So maybe we can think a little bit about how we expand on just changing light bulbs to maybe looking at illumination and energy efficiency and the quality of our fixtures campus wide, and use the green team to do the survey. Great educational opportunity, right in the sweet spot of sustainability. And then I think Phil had mentioned Eversource offers services. So we were tinkering with how, if possible, we can use some of the excess budget we have. And Phil, of course, will address that as part of this morning's meeting and apply it to maybe that program. So since we raised it, it sort of dovetails on everything. Melissa's sustainability, promulgation, electrification of the campus, and good use of monies that go towards both educational but also operational facility savings. So I don't know how we move this forward. Maybe we earmark a little bit of the excess budget to this program and start it in June so we can utilize some of the funds, but really make it a fall program. And that way the green team's involved. We save a lot of money on light bulbs because then we know where the fixtures have to be changed campus wide, and we utilize money wisely. That will save us money. And I think the payback period is like 6 months. They go from fluorescent lamps to LEDs now. It's like immediate. So I'm not quite sure how we monetized that need, that ask, but I think I estimated about $25,000. But then we have a program. So maybe we talk about that some more on Monday night.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm not, I don't know what, maybe Phil, you know what the Eversource program is for institutions. I do know what it is, for homeowners, and it's, where you can get an energy audit done of your home, and they effectively pay for the audit as well as much of the upgrades or improvements, but there's a limit to how much money they have. So I don't know if, I know United Illuminating, at least for this count, well, maybe it was for last calendar year, had run through their funds. I don't know where Eversource is, and it may be a different program for institutions than it is for, homeowners.
Yeah. I mean, one of the initial thoughts that I had was, are we looking for this to be a district-wide project, or do we want to just start this for one school? And if it's going to be a district-wide project, I know we can utilize the surplus, to pay for the consultant. But do we want to use our funds? And again, it gets a little bit tricky for me sometimes, from the capital perspective and operate in terms of, do we use that money to push the projects forward, or do we then incorporate this into the broader capital project? And I think that's where I struggle sometimes in terms of where things should be. So that's just really the only question that I have. We would have to find a consultant that would really, if we're going to do it and we want to do it right, because it's not necessarily that we change a one for one, but we want to ensure that we have the correct light and the illumination is correct. So we definitely want to have a company that is proficient in this. And I think in Westport, they did something like this. So we can look into that as well. But again, it's just the scope. What are we doing in terms of the scope? And I'm not quite sure, Mike, what is the actual life of an LED?
Well, it's usually roughly about 10 years, but it also depends on usage. I mean, we put in the LEDs for E-Wing and D-Wing of the high school, roughly 15, and we haven't had to touch a fixture until this year. So that's a good 7 years. So it's definitely a lot more than the incandescent bulbs or the fluorescent. And there's also I even like nominal cost. Yeah, it's a little bit more money to purchase the fixture, but you're taking out the bulbs that need to be changed twice a year. And there's also what's called a ballast inside, which powers up the lighting. So it's a worthwhile upgrade. But years, I would say no less than 7-8 years.
Right. So even if we do decide ultimately to whatever the change in configuration, I think by then we would pretty much be at the end of the useful life for these bulbs. I think it's a good project to start. As we talk about capital projects, so we did not have a hard price or cost to do the D and E wing. One suggestion would be to use our surplus to fund that. So I'm not quite sure if that's a consideration as well, instead of including that within the capital budget, to pretty much use the surplus to do that, the D and E wing, in addition to paying for the consultant to do a broader district-wide analysis.
Mike,
Maybe you pilot there, see, and we learn lessons that need to be learned, and maybe a year from now we have this discussion about expanding that to all 5 buildings, right? So we use one that we need
Fair enough.
and pilot it, and make sure the checklists are made and students understand and the consultants competent, and we get bang for our buck. And we utilize funds today and funds that we earmark for capital budgets next year, and we move it to a broader program. Seems like a good 2-step approach.
Mike, were you here? This is a long time ago when we had a person full time, the energy efficiency person. That's got to be 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Or at least 10 years ago. Was that in your mind successful? And I'm not quite sure because I wasn't on the Board of Education what that individual did.
Yeah, that was kind of about the start of my tenure here.
I was there.
Yeah, they did a lot
Do you
of,
remember what he did?
yeah, it was some parts of energy management. Exactly what he did with the lighting and things like that, I'm not exactly sure, so I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah.
I remember one thing he did, which, and this is my interpretation of it. He would go around at night, like I'm saying, like planned visits in the evening, middle of the night, to check on electricity usage, both in form of lights and like stoves and refrigerators and all of that kind of stuff that was plugged in the buildings. Like I remember him saying, well, I came here at 3 o'clock to check about the usage. And he would send something out to the building principals. I don't remember what it was, but he would identify problems of inappropriate use of electrical, or if a thing went down, or I don't know what. I'm not explaining it well, but I know he did that. And he was pretty, relentless with that. And he did things like get that refrigerator out of this closet, staff member. This isn't not only for the fire, but it's like sucking electricity. It was all that kind of stuff. And, it was combined with the transportation. So I'm giving a vague response, but that's sort of what he did.
But I think it was successful.
Yes, it was. I mean, I remember I was never so in tune about those kinds of, electrical things. And, this isn't working at capacity, or these lights were on. What did Shamrock back then do? Or gotta shut this off and get that, you don't need this refrigerator. It's sucking all of this, or it's an old machine. We should replace it for more efficient. Now, does that warrant a part-time? It was part-time, and then the other part-time was transportation. Did it warrant that? I don't know, but I think it's important to keep it on the radar, because I do remember how obsessive it was. It was like, oh my God, people were very conscious of it.
Yeah, I think when we do the audit, when we have a company that does the audit, that it was a very detailed report, and they go from equipment to equipment to kind of figure out if you change this, then you can do this. If you change the time on when these items would go to sleep, so to speak, you can change stuff. So the energy audit is a very detailed audit. I think we'll probably get a better bang from our buck, because that's a one and done. And it's just a matter for us then to just implement all the recommendations that they have instead of having a person. I think a lot has evolved since the person has been here. And I also think that the district itself has done things to improve on that. So I think we're in a good place. But our end, we just need to make the next step, or the next leap.
Okay.
Oh, before we jump off sustainability, just a thought. We do have in the capital budget the project to install the electric charging station at the back of the high school. One suggestion as well, I think that it's a minimal cost, is below $30,000, is to, again, use the surplus to pull that from the capital budget and to use our surplus to fund that project, sooner rather than later, instead of having it in the summertime. So I'm not quite sure if that's something that we want to make or to recommend to the Board of Finance.
I asked that question when they came up a couple of meetings ago. I mean, Jonathan told me the cost of the town for what they're putting in is around $17,000. So it may be even less than what we were thinking.
Yeah, and I think it is the same company that the town is using. And so whatever cost the town is getting, the cost should pretty much be the same for us. So again, it's two parts. It's the actual cost to do the project, and then there's also the rebate portion of that as well. So once we decide to move forward, we'll definitely work with Titan Electric, I do believe it is, to kind of shore up the cost and get it moving.
Where is it going to go? I'm sorry.
Mike?
It's going to go outside Sea Wing. So if you can imagine the loading dock driveway,
Yeah.
it's going to go, if you're pulling out of the loading dock driveway, on the right-hand side, the first couple spots. And that's
And there's a reason for that, Lisa.
There has to be a reason, correct? It's
Yeah.
like probably not optional because of the electrical and all that.
That's absolutely correct. It will probably be a little bit more than the town, only because the amount of footage that the wire has to run through the building to get out. But it's really was the only location we could do. We tried to get across the street into the main parking lot, try to come off of the power lines. It wasn't an option. We can come out of another parking lot, but then we have to go through, under sidewalks, under asphalt. It was just a nightmare of a project. So this was just the optimal place for it to go.
So one of the things that we'll have to work out, I don't want to get too into the weeds here, is who is it for? Because that's staff parking, and then who is going to keep the rotation of it? And so maybe Mike can help us with that. Because it's my understanding you can just park your car and leave it for 7 hours. It's the idea, charge it and move it.
Right, and also there is built-in technology where there's let's say there's a hub where we can control access, and we can give employees like a card for them to charge. In addition to that, we can also program the unit, so after hours, if there's anyone from the public, we can either decide that it's going to be free for everyone, or we can decide that after hours that there can be a charge associated with charging, with charging. So there's a financial aspect, so that's included. If we opt to do that.
The other thing I'm just thinking of when I'm seeing Peter here is this is something that when you're looking how many years ahead and doing the buses and all that,
Good point.
these kids will have more and more electric cars, and we'll have to think about that, for
Yeah.
the future plans.
How many cars does it serve now? Just 2?
This will be 2, yes.
And is there space both space in terms of physical space, but also space in terms of electrical space to expand that in coming years?
We have the room. The coming years, as we upgrade things to LED, we'll have more room in the panels. But the panels are pretty tight at this point, but we do have room for this charging station.
It's very exciting.
So can I take this as consensus to start looking into doing that, and then ultimately to remove that from the capital project? From this.
Yeah, for me, absolutely.
Okay, and then we'll have
Okay.
that broader discussion in terms of once we start to, if we should have any other items to mitigate the budget, we'll just get the full consensus off the board. But we'll start the legwork in moving this forward.
Yeah, I think that's right. And then I just wanted to, something to think about. And I know this is busy time with the budget, but I think we should figure out what the process is for sustainability initiatives in terms of, where staff can go with ideas, what funds are budgeted. Is it a line item? Is it not a line item? How do we communicate that to the school community so that people, it just seems like right now that there might be inefficiencies in how we're approaching some of these initiatives. Are we going to, if a teacher has an idea, are they going to the building level principal? Are they coming to Phil? Are they coming to Mike? Are they coming to Megan? Are they coming to Lisa? Let's think, and maybe it requires, a small, short planning meeting in terms of how we want to go forward. But I think we've got a lot of people that are motivated and working hard, and we don't want to have
Yeah, I think probably just having a quick meeting
Yeah.
with just a few key people just to talk it, and maybe this is one thing maybe Lisa can bring up at her principal's meeting to see what the way forward is. She just stepped away, so I'll have that discussion with her.
Here she comes back.
I'm sorry, Melissa, if you don't mind repeating that.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think we should maybe have a planning meeting or some other process to set up a a system and a process in place for how to go about reaching funds that are earmarked for sustainability so that, people aren't going through the wrong place and wasting people's time or efficiency. How do we access sustainability initiatives efficiently? So maybe a planning meeting, a short one, or maybe you have thoughts on that?
Well, I'm sorry, this is kind of related to budget.
Yeah,
correct?
it's not for anything specific right now. It's kind of setting up a system that can be in place for many, many
Sure.
years. If a teacher or a staff member says, hey, I think we should do this green planting initiative, are there funds in the budget? Well, yes, there's this amount of funding, and this is the person that you speak to, and this is how it gets approved. And, does it go straight to a building level principal? Does it come to our finance committee? Where, and how is that
Yeah,
communicated?
I think a couple of things have to happen, because I had taken a note. The first thing I want to do is have a district green team meeting. And this isn't just about the money. Well, it can be a part of it, but I want to have a district green team meeting internally with the teachers and the administrators that are involved across the district in the green team. When we talked briefly to Mike Aikenhead, specifically kind of like as a patch, Band-Aid to it, I said to him, okay, when you order things for your course, there's this in the supply budget. You must, when you place the order, put in the note that it's sustainability. So at least we know that right now. You know what I mean? Like, this amount is for your course, put it in. And then we had a brief discussion, because we were talking about that a little bit with him and his kids, about the line that Monica Rogers manages with, their revenue and their fundraising and where that would go. I think this also kind of dovetails into the fundraising policy that we looked at, all of that. So I think you're right. We can kind of talk through it. Why don't Phil and I talk through it internally? Then we can get you guys in the loop. Then we can talk to the old green team. So something is set up by next school year is kind of my goal. But the first step, I think, it's kind of like we're flying the plane while we're building it. That's not a good analogy. And we don't want to slow things down. But some of these questions, well, it goes to the Top Gun theme, remember? The beginning of the school year. Some of these
That's right.
things we don't want to slow anybody down. It's kind of like the banner thing, right? We want to keep it going while we straighten some stuff out. So I'm on it, and I made a note, and we'll get on it.
Great.
Okay.
I want to come with some ideas, a draft, and then we can do that with you. Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move on to the monthly financial update? Phil?
So update. So we're seeing some, we do have some unfilled positions throughout the district, and we as time progresses, we will start figuring out whether or not it will continue to be unfilled for the remainder of the school year. It's February, and the end of the year is quickly approaching. So to that end, we do have vacant or unfilled position in SPED PPS, BCBA, and PT. And at this point, we have determined that we will not be filling those positions. We'll be using a third party to pretty much just for continuity of services. So we have released those funds to the tune of approximately $164,000. As we progress to the end of the school year, we may find that those other unfilled positions, for example, the district psychologist position that we were hoping to fill with a second SPED PPS director, if that continues and we're not going to fill that role, we're going to release the funds for that position. We've also transferred $10,000 to the SPED grant. So that's $10,000 that was there. We have turnover savings of $72,000, and we have a small work comp reimbursement of $1,100. We're slightly over in the professional services, 2 areas. One again is the use of the third party for SPED PPS, for BCBA support, and also for physical therapy, and consultant for evaluations and the like. So we're trying to manage, we're trying to monitor that. And also we're using grant funding to help support this. I think we're close to maxing out the funds that we have available in the SPED PPS grant for that. But I think we should be in a good place. But as I mentioned yesterday, SPED PPS, that can change quickly. So that's where we are. In addition to that, legal fees, the district line for legal fees could ultimately be over through the end of the fiscal year. I've increased that encumbrance slightly by about $30,000. And again, it's just a coincidence that it's the same amount as what the year-to-date FOIA cost is. But I think 30,000 is pretty much adequate to get us there. I have listed what those main drivers are for legal fees. We have bargaining costs for $40,000, FOIA for 31, miscellaneous teacher matters for 16,000, and just general services for 33,000. We will see additional costs for negotiations for ASME, albeit it shouldn't be as significant as what we saw for the WTA and WA. I've made an adjustment for the purchase of the reading materials, which we discussed to mitigate the budget for FY24, $292,000. And I have, for discussion, also include an encumbrance to purchase equipment that we would need to support the new groundskeeper that we have. We do need to purchase a UTV, which is pretty much an all-terrain vehicle, for this person to pretty much drive in the field and to be able to move his supplies to the various fields that we have. So it's two parts. We have the cost. We have the cost for the UTV, and we also have the cost to have an enclosed trailer that will be hauled by the UTV. The UTV will also be used off-season to do snow removal, primarily for the sidewalks. So the all-in cost for that is going to be about $48,000.
And that's in which budget?
This is in this budget. For this year, using the surplus from this year to purchase that, because this position will be, as Mike mentioned, we're starting to interview for that position.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to get that up and get that person started in about March or so, because we do start to, let's say, open up the fields in March, early March, depending on the weather.
And the 164 is net of the third-party expenses, or?
The 134 is a salary, and then we have third party, which we're going to be over at about 80,000. So it's about 80,000 net. 80,000 net savings.
And Lisa, just from a staffing point of view, have we looked at it? I don't know who this third-party provider, is, and if it's something that can be utilized going forward. Is that a consideration?
It's tricky with some of these things because they have contracts that then you can't have them. It's always a consideration. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. If they sign a contract with like as an organization, like a contracting service, sometimes they can't work for us. I'll give you an example. We wanted to take one of the ESS people when we built our own program, and she had signed, I don't know if it's non-compete or I don't know what, and we couldn't. So.
Yeah, Steve, and just to add on to that, if we think from a cost perspective, it's while we do always use a third party services throughout SPED PPS, for some services, for example, the BCBAs and the OT and PT services, we do try to have our own staff for those positions, because it does become expensive with a third party. There is also speech, and speech as well is another one of those tricky areas for SPED PPS, where there's always a shortage area where you can't find employees to do those services, and you do have to rely on third parties for those services.
Yeah, no, I'm asking. Just it's a natural question, that needs to be asked.
Okay, so
Oh, I'm Melissa, Peter.
No, just to round it up. So we're looking at a surplus
Go ahead.
as of end of January at about $513,000, and we'll continue to monitor that and provide updates.
There is something I want to mention with regards to staffing. You're going to hear about it on Monday night, and it's the regards of like, what do we do? The HR director is leaving as of March 8th. She has taken a position very, very close to her home in Northern Connecticut. And so we may have to pinch hit with someone for at least a couple of days a week. We've been very aggressive in just the last couple of days since we got the resignation. But I do want to put that on people's radar because that is a position that, you know, I cannot be the HR director for the next 4 months. Bill can't. Mike Del Mastro can't.
I
You know
keep
what I
saying there's some positions where you would not want me in those roles.
So, and if anyone in the listening public knows of anyone, please kindly reach out directly to me. I will be handling the search with Ms. Cross.
Any more,
Any questions on the reports? Sorry.
Peter?
Great. And as it relates to the Internal Services Fund, we're trending as we expect the fund to trend.
Okay. Anybody, Peter, Melissa, any questions or?
No,
No, I don't have any
Thank you.
questions.
Peter, you like to talk about the EOS?
do I want to talk about what topic?
Educational Optimization Committee.
The EOC. Yeah, so I
I'm
sent a
sorry,
note.
EOC.
That's okay. I sent a note to the Board of Ed and to Lisa about my activities. So I have a deck and I have a Q&A that I've had with the educational lead at IDEO. And they have a long history working with institutions, secondary, colleges, healthcare. And we have some really good case studies to draw on to start molding our thinking and driving us. And then I went through a Q&A session with her asking sort of the tough questions to ask. And we have that list. And we can decide how we want to distill that and summarize that and maybe make that an agenda item for Monday night's general meeting. But it could be as much as I can go through the deck, it'll take about 10 minutes, and maybe some of the Q&A on just a Word document, or I can just do a quick summary like I've done here, but maybe add a little bit of detail. So we can just decide amongst ourselves what's best and what can be digested on this round. But really, really fascinating insights, an affirmation that we're on the right track. Certainly, there's a lot of design constraints that we face, but there's ways of moving beyond those constraints. And they were fairly excited about our initiative, pretty unique. So, and we're in a great position to pursue this because we have a campus. We really are a unique district like that. And part of that Q&A also addressed some of the interesting and insightful questions we got from the Board of Select People during the meeting. So I think that'd be interesting and useful to share with the general public. So how do you want to proceed, Steve? You want me to summarize that with maybe pull one or two slides in the Q&A, or do you want me just to read a paragraph saying this is as far as we've progressed, and this is an initiative I took in San Francisco?
Melissa, I don't know about you, but one, I think it should definitely be discussed on Monday. And then two, we really need to, now set a calendar to put everything in motion to start moving this forward. The whole committee process forward. We are, we're kind of constrained by, by the dates associated with getting state funding. So we kind of have a window of, I don't know, 15, 16 months before before we can, before we can realistically go back to the state. So yeah, I think it should be on the agenda for Monday, and then you and I should talk about kicking this whole thing off and getting it moving forward.
Yeah, in earnest. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that's right.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we first met in December, I forewarned that we were facing the headwinds of a break in the budget season, but I think we've moved, at least this group has moved beyond that for now. So I think it's timely to kick it off.
Yeah,
in
I mean,
earnest. And
Look, we're a month to ending the budget. There's only, there's a Board of Selectmen meeting next week, and then we go before the Board of Finance, and then, then the town. So those are kind of, more one-off now, and Lisa's got the presentation down cold, so I think we're in good shape.
Right. I think we preempt a question that I would anticipate when we have the referendum is we have this yearly budget and we have some pro forma looking forward. But, where does this fit into the larger picture, right? Are we planning with some look at the horizon and over the horizon, and having had a second EOC and a kickoff in earnest would sort of address that. So the timing would be good too.
Yeah, and just from a timing point of view, whether we're making plans for the next 20 years, and it's not something you do, without planning and without professional assistance. And we would be remiss if we didn't do that. So, all the work that you've been doing is terrific. I mean, what I've seen is really interesting.
Right. I mean, as we were tasked, this is somewhat in the brick and mortar, but more weighted towards what happens inside the brick and mortar or between the brick and mortar, right? So we have to fill all those gaps in now.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, for me personally, when we went before the Board of Selectmen earlier this week, I was thinking about what I could say to mitigate this idea that just because your enrollment's declined, you need less of everything. And I was trying to think about, what's changed in the last 10 years. And I just kind of focused on Apple and Apple products. And we had that morning had a conversation about Apple Watches and Apple Watches in the classroom, kids with Apple Watches in the classroom and what you can do on it. And the Apple Watch is 8 years old. We didn't have to deal with Apple Watches, it was created in 2014, and now we're in 2023, beginning of it. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's about the most simplistic thing that, you can bring to the forefront. You can imagine what it's going to be in
10 years from now.
By the time we have
global right. So let me do this just to circle back to where I started my quick update here. Let me maybe give like a paragraph summary on Monday night as an agenda item, and then we can say we're going to start examining this with the time frame that you had just laid out. So therefore, our fellow board members and also the public, just we start setting expectations for the work at hand and what's ahead of us. Wow. How about I do that?
That's great. That's a great idea.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Is there anything else? No.
I think that's all from our
Did
end.
we approve the minutes, Steve? I don't think we did.
No, I was about to say that.
Okay.
No. So the last to approve the January minutes of the Financial Facilities and Operations Committee. So are there any changes, or can I have a motion to approve?
I don't have any changes, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting in January of 2020.
Peter, is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, great. Well, thanks. See everybody Monday night.
That's right.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.